Most people think I left architecture because I didn't enjoy it or because things were not working out. That's probably the biggest misconception about my career. The truth is, I loved architecture. I spent 5 years studying it, graduated in 2019, and worked as an architect for about 1.5 years. And even after leaving my job, I won an international design competition. If you looked at my career from the outside, there was absolutely no reason for me to quit. And yet, that's exactly what I did. Instead of continuing as an architect, I decided to start over. I prepared for entrance exams, joined SP Delhi, and eventually built my career in UX design. Looking back, it sounds like a strange decision. And honestly, at the time, it felt like one too. Hi, I'm Shimendu, and in this video, I want to tell you why I made that decision. Not because everyone should leave their profession, but because I know there are people who feel stuck between what they have already invested years into and what they genuinely want to explore next. This is not a story about giving up on architecture. In many ways, architecture gave me the foundation for everything I do today. It taught me how to think, how to solve problems, how to communicate ideas, and how to design for people. Those lessons didn't disappear when I changed careers. They simply found a different place. My interest in design actually started much earlier. As a kid, I was always drawn towards drawing, making things, and understanding how different objects come together. I enjoyed creative work far more than memorizing facts. So, when the time came to choose a career, architecture felt like a perfect choice. It brought together creativity, logic, engineering, art, and probably problem solving in a way that few professions could. Architecture school was challenging, but I genuinely enjoyed the process. Studio submissions, model making, presentations, jury reviews, site visits. Every semester taught me something new. More importantly, it taught me that design is not just about making something look good. Every design decision needs a reason behind it. That way of thinking has stayed with me ever since. After graduating in 2019, I joined an architecture firm and finally got to experience the profession outside college. Working on real projects was completely different from working on academic ones. I learned how to communicate with clients, collaborate with different teams, present ideas clearly, work within constraints, and deal with feedback that was not always easy to hear. Those 1.5 years shaped me as a designer in ways I didn't fully appreciate back then. But somewhere during that time, I started asking myself a difficult question. Was architecture the only way I wanted to solve problems for the rest of my career? It was not a question that came from frustration. It came from curiosity. I found myself becoming increasingly interested in technology and the way digital products were changing how people lived, worked, and interacted with the world. In January 2021, I made what was probably the biggest decision of my career. I left my job without having everything figured out. I knew I wanted to move towards design, but I was not completely sure what that path looked like yet. Looking back, it was one of the most uncertain periods of my life, but it also became the turning point that eventually led me to UX design. When I joined the master's program, I quickly realized that UX was not just about making apps look beautiful. In architecture, I had spent years thinking about how people experience physical spaces. In UX, the medium had changed, but the questions were surprisingly familiar. Instead of asking how someone would move through a building, I was asking how they would navigate a product. Instead of designing floor plans, I was designing user flows. Instead of presenting concepts to clients, I was validating ideas with the users. The tools were different, but the mindset felt familiar. Of course, that didn't mean the transition was easy. I had to learn an entirely new vocabulary, terms like user research, information architecture, design systems, interaction design, and accessibility were all new to me. There were moments when I questioned whether I had made the right decision. I was surrounded by people from different fields, and I often felt like I was starting from zero. But looking back, I think that's exactly what made the experience valuable. Starting over forced me to become comfortable with being a beginner again. As I learned more about UX, I also started appreciating my architecture background in a completely different way. Earlier, I used to think I was leaving architecture behind, but gradually I realized that was not true at all. Architecture had already taught me how to think systemically, break down complex problems, communicate ideas visually, and design with people in mind. Those skills didn't disappear when I changed my careers. They simply found a different application. By the time I graduated in 2023, I was not trying to become an architect who knew UX. I was trying to become a designer who could solve problems regardless of the medium. Whether the outcome was a building, a website, or mobile app mattered less than understanding the people who would eventually use it. That shift in perspective was probably been the biggest lesson of my career so far. After graduating, I started working as UX designer and had the opportunity to work on products across different domains. Every project introduced me to new business problems, new users, and new constraints. Over the last couple of years, another shift has started changing the industry even faster. AI is transforming the way designers work, the way products are built, and even the skills companies expect from the designers. The conversations today are very different from ones we were having just a few years ago. We are no longer talking about only about wireframes, interfaces, and user journeys. We are talking about AI assistants, automation, multimodal experiences, and entirely new ways of interacting with technology. Once again, I found myself learning from scratch, just like I did when I moved from architecture to UX. When I was trying to transition from architecture to UX, I spent countless hours looking for people who had already gone through a similar experience. I wanted to know what worked, what didn't, what mistakes to avoid, and whether starting over was actually possible. Finding those answers was not always easy, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to share my story. I don't think my path is the only path, and I definitely don't have all the answers. But if you are at the stage where you're questioning your career, thinking about changing directions, or simply trying to figure out your next step, I hope this video gave you a little more clarity and confidence. Looking back, I don't see architecture as a career that I left behind. It became the foundation for everything that I have done since. It taught me how to think, how to solve problems, how to communicate ideas, and how to keep learning. Those skills stayed with me even when the profession changed. If there's one thing I'd like you to take away from my story, it's this. Don't let your degree convince you that your future has already been decided. Your education gives you a foundation, but where you build on that foundation is entirely up to you. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your own experiences in the comments. And if you are someone who is considering a transition into UX or just wants to connect, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to share whatever I have learned along the way. I'll see you in the next one.